The alarm bells rang through the Terran salvage station with their usual harsh sound. Deho looked up from the engine parts he was cleaning and wiped the oil from his hands with an old rag. Another ship had come in, the third one this week. He walked across the metal floor of his workshop toward the main viewing window. Outside in the black space around Kepler 442, he could see the massive salvage hauler slowly moving toward Bay 7. The ship was carrying something big on its back, something that did not look like any vessel he had seen before. "Hey, Deho," called young Mi as she jogged up behind him. Her tool belt jangled with each step. "Did you see what they brought in this time?" "Just looking at it now." Deho pressed his face closer to the thick glass. "That is not a normal wreck." The alien ship was strange to look at. It had the shape of a pyramid, but twisted like someone had grabbed it and turned it while it was still soft. The metal was dark, but had lines of light running through it like veins. Most wrecks were cold and dead when they arrived at the station. This one seemed to be breathing. "The energy readings are all wrong," young Mi said as she checked her scanner. "Look at this." The power core is still running. After floating in dead space for who knows how long, Deho had been working on salvaged ships for 15 years. He had learned to trust his feelings about these things. When a ship felt wrong, it usually was wrong. But this was not the bad kind of wrong. This was the kind of wrong that made his hands itch to get inside and figure out what made it work. "Get the suits ready," he told young Mi. "We go in as soon as the hauler finishes docking." Young Mi nodded and ran off to get their equipment. Deho stayed at the window and watched the alien ship. The lights under its skin pulsed in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. 20 minutes later, they were suited up and walking across the docking tube toward Bay 7. The salvage hauler had already left to find more wrecks. The alien ship sat alone under the bright lights of the bay. Up close, it looked even stranger. "Those are not blast marks," Deho said as he ran his gloved hand along the hull. "Look, the metal is melted but in patterns, like someone drew on it with fire." "Maybe their weapons work differently than ours," young Mi suggested. She was running her scanner along the side of the ship. "I am getting some weird readings here. The hull is not just metal. There is something organic mixed in." They found an airlock near what might have been the front of the ship. It was larger than any airlock built for humans, big enough for something much taller to walk through easily. "Whoever built this ship was not our size," young Mi said. The airlock opened with a soft hiss when Deho touched the control panel. The symbols on it were nothing like human writing or any alien language he knew, but the door recognized that they wanted in and let them through. Inside, the ship was even stranger than outside. The hallways were wide and curved upward in ways that hurt to look at. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch. Emergency lights cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. "This does not feel like a machine," young Mi said quietly. "It feels alive," Deho had to agree. Every ship had its own feel. Human ships felt solid and practical. Fourth-hand ships felt cold and precise. This ship felt like walking inside a sleeping animal. They moved deeper into the vessel. The corridors branched and curved in directions that made no sense. Sometimes they would walk down a hallway and end up higher than where they started without going up any stairs. "Deho," young Mi called from ahead. "You need to see this." She was standing in front of what looked like a cargo bay, but the doors were sealed with symbols that glowed red when they got close. "I am reading massive life signs beyond this door," young Mi said. Her voice was tight with excitement. "Multiple organisms, some big, some small. Survivors?" Deho asked. After floating in space for so long, he had not expected to find anyone alive. "Maybe. But the readings are strange. One of the life signs is huge, bigger than anything I have ever scanned. The others are clustered around it." Deho studied the sealed door. The glowing symbols seemed to pulse faster when he got near them, like they were trying to tell him something. "Can you open it?" young Mi asked. "Maybe." Deho pulled out his plasma cutter. "But if there are survivors in there, we need to be careful. We do not know what kind of atmosphere they need." "The air in this ship is breathable," young Mi said, checking her scanner again. "Oxygen levels are good. Temperature is warm but not dangerous." Deho nodded and began cutting around the door controls. The plasma beam worked on the outer layer, but seemed to have trouble with whatever was underneath. It took him 10 minutes to cut through to the manual release. The door opened slowly with a grinding sound. Beyond it was darkness and the smell of something like flowers and metal mixed together. "Light," Deho said. Young Mi turned on her work lamp and pointed it into the dark space. The beam caught something that made them both freeze. Scales. Huge scales that reflected the light like mirrors. And beyond the scales, the outline of something massive lying on the floor. "What is that?" Young Mai whispered. Daeho stepped through the doorway and raised his own light. The beam traveled along what could only be a body the size of a shuttle, covered in scales that shifted color as the light hit them. "I think," Daeho said slowly, "we just found a dragon." The creature was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Its head was as long as Daeho was tall. Its body stretched back into the darkness farther than their lights could reach. But it was not moving. "Is it dead?" Young Mai asked from behind him. Before Daeho could answer, the dragon opened one enormous eye. The eye was the color of deep space with stars scattered through it, and it was looking directly at him. The dragon spoke without moving its mouth. The words formed inside Daeho's head like his own thoughts, but in a voice that was definitely not his own. "You are not Kethval?" Daeho almost dropped his light. "No, we are human. This is our salvage station." "Human." The dragon seemed to taste the word. "I do not know this species. I am Veltar, and I am dying." That was when Daeho saw the chains. The chains were unlike anything Daeho had ever seen. They wrapped around the dragon's massive body like glowing snakes. Each link pulsed with a sickly yellow light that hurt to look at directly. The metal was not normal metal. It seemed to shift and move even when perfectly still. "Those are not regular restraints," Youngmi said. Her scanner was beeping frantically as she pointed it at the chains. "They are drawing energy from something. A lot of energy." Veltar's great eye followed their movements. When she spoke again, her mental voice was weaker than before. "The chains feed on life force. They were designed by the Kethval to drain us slowly, to keep us alive but weak while they harvest our essence." Daeho felt his stomach turn. He had seen many terrible things in his years working salvage. Pirates who left crews to die in space, slavers who treated people like cargo. But this was something worse. This was torture designed to last forever. "How long have you been chained like this?" he asked. "Many months, since my capture." Veltar's breathing was shallow and labored. "My strength fades more each day. Soon I will not be able to speak at all." Young Mi was walking around the dragon's body with her scanner. "Daeho, look at this. The chains are not just on her. There are smaller life signs here too." She pointed her light toward Veltar's side. In the shadows near the dragon's belly, 3 smaller shapes huddled together. They were also dragons, but much younger. Each one was about the size of a large dog. "My children," Veltar said. Her mental voice carried deep sadness. "Namri, Sojin, and Taewan. They have known nothing but these chains since hatching." The young dragons lifted their heads when they heard their names. Their scales were duller than their mother's. Instead of the shifting colors that played across Veltar's hide, theirs were mostly gray, with only hints of other colors. "The chains affect them too?" Daeho asked. "When I die, the shock will kill them within hours. We are bound together by more than blood. Dragon families share their life force. It is what makes us strong. But the Kethval turned our greatest gift into our greatest weakness." Daeho knelt down near the smallest of the young dragons. The little one watched him with eyes that held too much sadness for something so young. When he reached out slowly, the dragon did not pull away. "They are not afraid of us," he noticed. "Dragons can sense intent," Veltar explained. "You mean no harm? Your hearts are unusual. Most species think only of what they can gain when they find us. You think of what you can give." Young Mi was still scanning the chains. "The energy drain is getting stronger. These readings show the chains are pulling more power now than they were an hour ago. They respond to hope," Veltar said quietly. "When I thought rescue might be possible, they began to drain faster. It is another cruelty of their design." Daeho stood up and walked around the dragon's massive form. The chains were attached to anchor points driven deep into the ship's floor. Each anchor point hummed with the same yellow energy as the chains themselves. "Who are the Kethval?" he asked. "Why would anyone do this?" "They are an empire built on the suffering of others. For 1,000 years they have conquered world after world. They turn entire species into slaves or resources. My people were especially valuable to them because of our abilities." "What abilities?" Veltar's eye closed for a moment. When she opened it again, the colors in her scales shifted to show deep blues and purples. "We sing the songs that shape reality. Our voices can heal wounds, strengthen metal, even bend space itself. The Kethval use our captured essence to power their war machines." Young Mi looked up from her scanner. "That explains these energy readings. The chains are not just draining her life. They are converting it into some kind of fuel. How many of your people are left? Deho asked. Before my capture, perhaps 60 adults remained free. Now I do not know. The Kethvil hunt us across the galaxy. They have been very efficient in their genocide. The word hit Deho like a physical blow. Genocide. The systematic destruction of an entire species. He had read about such things in history books. Wars between alien empires that wiped out whole worlds. But he had never seen the result up close. One of the young dragons, Sojin, made a small sound. It was barely audible, but it carried such loneliness that Deho felt his heart break a little. The younglings have never heard the songs of our people, Veltar said. They do not know what they are capable of. The chains silence our voices along with draining our strength. There has to be a way to break these chains, Youngmi said. She was running her hands along the glowing links, being careful not to touch them directly. Every machine can be broken. Every lock can be opened. Many have tried. The Kethvil built their prisons well. The chains are designed to kill the prisoner if tampered with. I have seen others die trying to escape. Deho pulled out his tools and began examining one of the anchor points. The metal was warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate with contained power. His scanner showed complex energy patterns flowing through it. What if we do not try to break them? He said slowly. What if we try to turn them off instead? Impossible. The chains respond only to Kethval commands. No other species can control their technology. Maybe. Deho was already thinking like a mechanic. Every machine had weaknesses. Every system had flaws. The Kethvil might be advanced, but they were not perfect. But humans have a talent for making impossible things work. Young Mi grinned despite the serious situation. Remember the Vorthan dreadnought last year? Everyone said those engines could not be restarted. And now it is the fastest ship in the human fleet, Deho finished. He looked at Veltar with determination. We are going to get you out of those chains. Even if you could, it would not matter. My people have nowhere to go. The Kethval will find us again. Maybe they will. Maybe they will not. But first, let us worry about keeping you alive long enough to find out. Deho was already moving toward the door. Young Mi, stay with them. I need to get to the ship's computer core. What are you planning? I am going to learn how to speak Kethval. Deho made his way through the twisted corridors of the alien ship, toward what his scanner showed as the central computer core. The hallways seemed to shift around him as he walked. Walls that had been on his left would suddenly be on his right. Doors appeared where none had been before. This ship is designed to confuse intruders, he muttered to himself. But Deho had worked on stranger vessels. He followed the energy readings on his scanner like a trail of breadcrumbs. The computer core was hidden behind a door covered in the same glowing symbols he had seen throughout the ship. This time the symbols were moving. They crawled across the surface like living things, forming new patterns every few seconds. Deho pressed his hand against the door. The symbols stopped moving and flashed bright white. Then the door dissolved, becoming nothing more than empty air. Inside was a room that made his head hurt to look at. The walls curved in directions that should not have been possible. In the center of the room stood something that might have been a computer, if computers were grown instead of built. It looked like a tree made of crystal and metal. Its branches reached up toward a ceiling that seemed infinitely high. Each branch ended in clusters of lights that pulsed with data. At the base of the tree, root-like cables disappeared into the floor. Okay, Deho said to the empty room. Let us see what makes you tick. He approached the computer tree carefully. When he got close, symbols appeared in the air around him. They were the same writing he had seen on the doors, but now they moved slowly enough for him to study them. Deho pulled out his portable analyzer and began recording the symbols. After 15 years of working with alien technology, he had learned that most species thought in similar ways. They all needed to store information, process commands, and control their machines. The symbols might look different, but the logic underneath was usually the same. He spent an hour mapping the symbol patterns. Slowly, a picture began to form. The Kethval writing was not just letters and words. It was mathematical formulas written in a visual language. Each symbol represented a relationship between energy, matter, and space. Clever, he admitted. They write their language the same way they build their machines. Everything connected to everything else. His analyzer chimed softly. It had found repeating patterns in the symbol sequences. Deho studied the results and felt excitement building in his chest. The patterns were command structures, instructions telling the ship's systems what to do. Back in the cargo bay, young Me was watching Veltar's condition worsen. The dragon's breathing had become more labored. Her scales were losing their color, fading to a dull gray. "How is she doing?" Deho asked when he returned. "Not good. The chains are draining faster. I think they know you are trying to interfere with them." Young Me showed him her scanner readings. "The energy draw has increased by 30% in the last hour. Then we need to work faster." Deho knelt beside the nearest anchor point and connected his analyzer to the glowing metal. "I found the computer core. The Kethval use a mathematical language based on energy relationships. Can you read it?" "Some of it. Enough to understand how these chains work." Deho pointed at the flowing symbols on his screen. "The chains are not just restraints. They are part of a larger system. A network that connects to every Kethval ship and station." Veltar opened one weary eye. "You learned their language in 1 hour?" "Not learned. More like translated. Mathematics is universal. Energy flows follow the same rules everywhere in the galaxy." Deho was already working on the anchor point using his tools to trace the energy pathways. "The chains send a constant signal to the Kethval fleet. Location, prisoner status, energy levels harvested. If you break that signal, they will know something is wrong," Veltar warned. "Maybe. Or maybe we can make the signal say something different." Deho pulled out a small device he had built from spare parts. "This is a frequency modulator. I use it to communicate with alien computer systems. If I can match the signal patterns the chains use, I might be able to send false information." Young Mai looked skeptical. "You want to hack an entire alien empire's computer network with spare parts?" "I want to make them think you are already dead," Deho explained to Veltar. "If the chains report that their prisoner has died and been processed, the Kethval will mark this ship as empty. They will not come looking for you. And if your plan fails, then we try something else. Humans are very stubborn about not giving up." Namri, the smallest of the young dragons, made a soft chirping sound. It was the first time any of the younglings had made noise since Deho arrived. "She says you smell like metal and lightning," Veltar translated. "She has never encountered anyone like you before." Deho smiled at the little dragon. "Tell her I smell like a mechanic who has been working too hard." He connected his modulator to the anchor point and began copying the signal patterns the chains were sending. The data stream was complex, but he could see the underlying structure. Status reports, energy measurements, location markers, prisoner identification codes. "There," he said after several minutes. "I have the base signal pattern. Now I need to modify it to show that the energy harvesting is complete." Working with alien technology always felt like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Deho had to guess how the Kethval systems would interpret his modified signals. One wrong number could trigger security protocols that would kill Veltar instantly. "The chains are responding to your interference," Young Me warned. "The energy drain is spiking." Veltar gasped in pain as the chains glowed brighter. The young dragons pressed closer to their mother, their own scales dimming as the shared life force was pulled away faster. "Almost got it," Deho muttered, his fingers flying over his equipment. "Just need to find the right frequency to convince them the harvest is done." The chains suddenly went silent. Their yellow glow faded to a dim amber. Veltar drew a deep breath, the first easy breath she had taken in months. "Did it work?" Young Me asked. Deho checked his readings. "The signal is broadcasting that prisoner processing is complete and the cargo hold is empty. As far as the Kethval know, there is nothing valuable left on this ship." "You made them think I am dead?" "Better than that. I made them think you were never here at all." The chains had stopped draining energy, but they were still locked around Veltar's massive body. She could breathe easier now, but the metal restraints held her as tightly as before. The young dragons sensed the change and lifted their heads with new hope in their eyes. "The chains no longer feed," Veltar said, her mental voice stronger than before. "But they still hold us prisoner." Deho studied the restraints more carefully. Now that they were not glowing with deadly energy, he could see their true construction. The metal was unlike anything in human technology. It seemed to shift and flow like liquid while remaining solid. "These are not normal locks," Young Me observed. She was running her scanner along the chains. "The metal responds to specific frequencies, like it is listening for something." "What kind of frequencies?" Deho asked. Veltar's scales brightened slightly. "The chains were designed to respond to dragon song, but they are programmed to lock tighter when they hear our voices. Another cruelty of Kethval design. So they use your own abilities against you." Deho frowned. "But what if someone else tried to sing to them? Someone who is not a dragon? Impossible. Dragon song is not mere sound. It is the manipulation of reality through controlled vibration. Your species does not have the vocal structures necessary to produce such tones. Young Me was already connecting her equipment to her scanner. Maybe we cannot make the sounds naturally, but humans build tools to do what we cannot do ourselves. She pulled out a small device that looked like a musical instrument, crossed with a computer. This is a sonic synthesizer. I use it to test resonance frequencies in ship hulls. It can produce any sound within a very wide range. Deho grinned. You want to teach a machine to sing dragon songs? Why not? If the chains respond to specific frequencies, we just need to find the right ones. Veltar watched them with growing amazement. You would attempt to learn the songs of my people in a few hours? Songs that take dragons decades to master? We do not need to master them, Deho explained. We just need to find one song that will convince the chains to open. Even if such a thing were possible, I am too weak to teach you properly. The songs are complex beyond your understanding. They require precise control over harmonics that affect matter at the smallest level. Young Me was already setting up her equipment. Then do not teach us the whole song. Just teach us enough to get started. For the next hour, Veltar tried to explain the basics of dragon song. It was not just melody, but mathematics made audible. Each note had to be perfectly placed in relationship to all the others. The harmony between sounds could strengthen metal, heal wounds, or break the bonds between atoms. The song you need is called the Unbinding, Veltar said. It was once used to free dragons trapped in cave-ins or avalanches. But the HFY have reversed its patterns. To them, the unbinding sounds like a command to lock tighter. So we need to reverse the reversal, Deho said. Like playing a recording backwards. More complex than that. You must invert the harmonic relationships while maintaining the mathematical precision. One wrong note will trigger the chain security protocols. Young Mai programmed the basic melody into her synthesizer. When she played it back, the sound was hauntingly beautiful, like wind through crystal caves mixed with the call of some impossible bird. The chains responded immediately. They began to glow again, but this time with a different color. Instead of sickly yellow, they pulsed with deep blue light. They hear the song, Veltar said with wonder, but they are confused. The melody is correct, but the harmonics are wrong for either opening or closing. Good, Deho said. Confused is better than angry. Now we need to find the exact frequencies that will make them think they should open. So Jin, one of the young dragons, made a soft sound. It was barely audible, but it contained notes that made the chains flicker. She is trying to help, Veltar explained. The younglings remember some songs from before their hatching. Knowledge passed down through generations. Taewan and Namri joined their sister, adding their small voices to hers. The sound they made together was weak but pure. The chains responded by shifting their color toward green. They are getting closer, Young Mi said, adjusting her synthesizer to match the young dragon's tones. The frequency analysis shows we need to go higher in the harmonic range. Deho watched the chain patterns carefully. The locks are mechanical, but they respond to sound like living things. What if we are thinking about this wrong? What if we do not need to command them to open? What if we need to convince them that opening is what they want to do? Explain, Veltar said. The HFY built these chains to respond to dragon song by locking tighter. But they had to build in the ability to unlock them somehow. Otherwise, how would they remove prisoners when they wanted to? Young Mai nodded slowly. So there must be a song that tells the chains their job is finished. A song that means the prisoner should be released. The Song of Completion. Veltar said quietly. I had not thought of that. It is a melody we sing when a task is done well. When a young dragon learns to fly. When a new city is built, when life returns to a barren world. Can you teach us that one? I can try. The Song of Completion was different from the Unbinding. Where the Unbinding was forceful and commanding, the Completion was gentle and satisfied. It spoke of work well done and rest well earned. As Young Mi programmed the new melody, Deho noticed something interesting. The young dragons were humming along, their voices growing stronger as the song continued. Even weak and drained, they seemed to gain energy from the music. This is what we were meant to do, Veltar said. Not war or conquest, but creation and completion. The HFY tried to turn our gift into a weapon, but songs of joy are stronger than songs of pain. Young Mi finished programming the synthesizer and looked at Deho. Ready to try? Do it. The Song of Completion filled the cargo bay with sound that seemed to make the air itself happy. The chains responded by shifting through a rainbow of colors, before finally settling on a warm gold. Then, one by one, they began to unlock. The first chain fell away from Veltar's wing with a sound like breaking glass. Then another from her leg. The young dragons chirped with excitement as they felt their mother's strength returning. "It is working," Veltar said, her mental voice filled with joy. "After so many months, I am free." The last chain fell away and Veltar stretched her wings for the first time since her capture. She was magnificent, her scales flowing through colors like aurora in the night sky. "Thank you," she said to the two humans who had given her back her life. "You have done something impossible today." "We just fixed something that was broken," Deho said simply. "That is what humans do." 3 days had passed since the chains fell away. Veltar was growing stronger with each hour of freedom. Her scales now blazed with colors that shifted like living rainbows. The young dragons had discovered the joy of flight in the large cargo bays of the salvage station. Deho watched from the observation deck as Namri practiced loops and spirals in the zero-gravity section. Her brothers Sojin and Taewon raced each other between the floating cargo containers. Their laughter rang like silver bells through the station's corridors. "They learn fast," Youngmi said, joining him at the window. "Yesterday they could barely hover. Today they are flying like they were born to it." "They were born to it," Veltar said, approaching them with steps that no longer showed exhaustion. "Flight is as natural to us as breathing." The chains had made them forget, but freedom reminded them quickly. The sight of dragons soaring through human space had caused quite a stir among the station crew. But humans were adaptable. After the initial shock, most people had simply accepted that their salvage station now housed a family of alien dragons. Some even brought snacks to watch the young ones play. "We cannot stay here much longer," Veltar said quietly. "The Kethful believe the ship is empty, but eventually they will send scouts to investigate. When they discover the truth, they will come with warships." Deho had been thinking about this problem for days. "Where will you go? You said there are not many safe places left in the galaxy." "There are not. My people are scattered and hiding. Most worlds fear the Kethval too much to offer sanctuary. We have become wanderers with no home." Youngmi frowned. "What about neutral space? There must be systems where the Kethval have no authority." "The Kethval Empire spans half the galaxy. Where they do not rule directly, they rule through fear. Few species dare to oppose them openly." "What about humans?" Deho asked. "Have they ever tried to attack our space?" Veltar's scales shifted to curious blues and greens. "Human space is far from the Empire's center."
"I know little of your people's military capabilities."
"The Kethval speak of humans as unusual." "Unusual how?" "Most species either submit to the Empire or are crushed by it. Humans have done neither. You are the only race that has fought the Kethval to a standstill in open battle." This was news to Deho. He had heard stories of border skirmishes with various alien empires, but nothing about a major war with the Kethval. "When did this happen?" Youngmi asked. 5 years ago. A Kethval fleet attempted to claim 3 human colony worlds. Your navy appeared as if from nowhere and destroyed the entire invasion force. The Empire has avoided human space ever since." Deho felt something stirring in his chest. An idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "What if you did not have to hide? What if you had somewhere the Kethval would never dare to look for you?" "You speak of human protection," Veltar said. "But why would your people risk war with the Empire for strangers like us?" "Because," Deho said slowly, "humans have a terrible habit of protecting things we care about. And we tend to care about anyone who needs help." Youngmi caught on to his thinking. "You want to bring them to human space. All of them. Every dragon left in the galaxy. Why not? We have 17 colony worlds that could support their atmospheric needs. Most of them have huge open spaces perfect for flying, and they would all be under Terran Federation protection." Veltar stared at him in amazement. "You would offer sanctuary to an entire species? Knowing it might bring you into conflict with the Empire? The way I see it, we are already in conflict with them. We just have not made it official yet." Deho pulled out his communication device. "I need to contact the Federation Council. This decision is bigger than one salvage station. Even if your leaders agreed, how would we contact the other survivors? My people are scattered across the galaxy, hiding on forgotten worlds and in the dark spaces between stars. We will figure that out. Humans are good at finding lost things." Youngmi was already working on her computer. "I can modify our long-range communicators to broadcast on dragon frequencies. If we send the right message, your people will know it comes from other dragons. What message? Feltar asked. The Song of Completion, Deho said, but changed to mean something new. A song that says the hiding is over, and it is time to come home. Over the next few hours, Deho worked frantically to contact Federation Command. The conversation took several hours because nobody quite believed what he was telling them. Dragons, ancient songs that could shape reality. An alien empire that hunted entire species to extinction. Finally, Admiral Jinne herself came on the communication link. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Mechanic Deho, she said formally, you are asking the Federation to offer sanctuary to refugees from a war we are not part of. Do you understand the implications? I understand that there are children out there who have never known freedom, Deho replied. I understand that an entire species is being hunted to extinction, and I understand that if we do nothing, we will have to live with that choice for the rest of our lives. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Show me these dragons. Deho turned his communicator toward the observation window. Outside, the three young dragons were playing a game that involved spiraling around each other in complex patterns. Their joy was obvious even through the metal and glass. They are children, Admiral Jinne said quietly. Yes, they are. And you believe their people can be trusted? Admiral, they could have killed us both the moment we freed them. Instead, they stayed to make sure we understood their gratitude. If that is not trustworthy, I do not know what is. The Admiral nodded slowly. Very well. By emergency authority of the Terran Federation, I hereby declare all dragons to be under human protection. Any attack upon them will be considered an act of war against humanity. Veltar's scales blazed with colors Deho had never seen before. You would do this for us? Risk everything for strangers? You are not strangers anymore, Admiral Jinne said from the communication screen. You are neighbors, and humans protect their neighbors? Young Me was already broadcasting the modified Song of Completion across the galaxy. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, dragons who had hidden for years would hear the call. They would know that the long exile was over. They were coming home. 6 months later, the first Kethval war fleet to enter human space discovered they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Jinne stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Defiance as enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace near the colony world of New Sol. 60 Kethval vessels formed a massive battle line, their dark hulls crackling with the stolen energy of a dozen enslaved species. Admiral, her communications officer reported, the Kethval fleet commander is demanding we surrender all dragons in our territory immediately. Tell him he can file a formal complaint with Federation diplomats, Jinne replied calmly. After he leaves our space, the Kethval response was predictable. Energy beams lanced out from their ships toward the human fleet. But the beams never reached their targets. Instead, they twisted in space and turned back on themselves, creating beautiful spirals of light that dissipated harmlessly. Dragon song, breathed the tactical officer. They are bending space itself. Around New Sol, hundreds of dragons flew in perfect formation with human fighters. Their voices joined together in harmonies that made reality itself dance to their will. Kethval weapons became powerless. Energy shields collapsed. Ship hulls began to resonate and crack. The battle was over in minutes. This is Admiral Jinne of the Terran Federation, she broadcast to the surviving Kethval ships. By the authority vested in me by the Terran Council, I hereby declare all dragonkind to be under the protection of humanity. Any act of aggression against them will be considered an act of war against the Federation. The message was broadcast across all frequencies and sent to every corner of the galaxy. Within hours, the news had spread to every civilized world. The Kethval Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for 1,000 years, had been defeated by a species most people had barely heard of. Down on New Sol, Deho watched the celebration from his new workshop. Through the window, he could see Veltar teaching her children the ancient songs while human children sat in wonder nearby. Namri had grown large enough to carry passengers, and she delighted in giving rides to anyone brave enough to ask. Did you ever think it would grow this big? Youngmi asked, joining him at the window. Honestly? No. Deho wiped his hands on a clean rag. I just thought it was wrong to leave them chained up. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 6 months, more than 3,000 dragons had answered the call to human space. They came from hidden colonies, forgotten asteroids, and the dark spaces between stars. Each arrival brought stories of loss and suffering, but also hope for the future. The dragons had not come empty-handed. Their knowledge of harmonic engineering was revolutionizing human technology, ships that could bend space with song, buildings that grew from crystalline matrices guided by dragon voices, medical techniques that used sound to heal wounds that had seemed impossible to treat. Sojin designed a new kind of engine yesterday, Youngmi said. She says it will let ships travel between stars in days instead of weeks. And Taewon is working with the agricultural teams. Apparently dragon song can make crops grow faster and stronger. They watched as Namri landed gracefully in the courtyard outside. She had become something of a local celebrity, known for her gentle nature and her love of human music. Several children were already running toward her, eager for their promised flight lessons. The Kethval are not finished, Veltar said, approaching them with her usual silent grace. The defeat of one fleet will not stop them. They will gather their forces and return in greater numbers. Let them come, Taeho said. We will be ready. You speak with such confidence, but the Empire commands millions of ships and countless enslaved species, and we have something they do not understand. Young Mi gestured toward the window where dragons and humans work together in the fading sunlight. We have people who choose to fight together instead of being forced to serve. The truth of those words had already begun to spread across the galaxy. Other species, seeing what humans and dragons had accomplished together, were beginning to question Kethval rule. Rebellion sparked on a dozen worlds. Slave species turned on their masters. The empire that had seemed eternal was beginning to crack. A year later, the Kethval Empire collapsed entirely. Not through conquest or invasion, but through the simple realization that their subjects no longer feared them. When people saw that the mighty empire could be defeated by cooperation and compassion, their power evaporated like morning mist. Daeho stood in the same observation deck where he had first watched dragons learn to fly. But now the view was different. New Seoul had grown into something incredible. Towers of living crystal reached toward the stars, their surfaces singing with harmonics that kept the city in perfect environmental balance. Dragons and humans worked side by side on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. Art that existed in 4 dimensions, music that could heal both body and spirit, technologies that seemed like magic but followed perfectly logical principles. Any regrets? Young Mai asked. She now headed the Department of Interspecies Engineering, designing the impossible things that had become commonplace. Only one, Daeho admitted. I wish I could have met the person who first chained them up. I would like to show him what we built instead. In the distance, a group of young dragons and human children were practicing a new song together. Their voices rose in harmony that made the air shimmer with possibility. This generation would grow up knowing that differences between species were not barriers but opportunities. The galaxy had learned something important from 2 humans who refused to walk away from suffering. It learned that the greatest strength came not from enslaving others but from setting them free. Not from taking what others had built, but from building something new together. And in workshops and laboratories across human space, mechanics and engineers continued to do what they did best. They fixed things that were broken. They built things that had never existed before. And they proved every single day that the most impossible thing to defeat was simple human stubbornness in the face of suffering. The Kethval had ruled through fear for 1,000 years, but they had never encountered a species that considered impossible to be just another problem waiting to be solved. The dragons were free. The galaxy was changing, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, other species in chains were beginning to hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would come to fix what was broken in their lives too. After all, that was what humans did best.